out of the way, you piece of trash! Who gave you permission to drive?
You hit my car. You ran a red lighting.
So what? Look at the rubbish car. You don't deserve to be on the same street as me.
He spat on her windshield.
My dad's a cop! A cop! Just one call, and I'll make sure you never drive again. They'll drag you out of here in handcuffs.
Are you done?
He stepped closer.
Oh, I'm just getting started, you stinky black girl.
As if it were the strongest trump card he could use. But the girl was holding a trump card he couldn't even imagine. Let's rewind. Saturday morning, mid-October. One of those crisp Virginia mornings where the leaves are turning gold and the air smells like damp earth and someone's fresh-cut grass down the street. Celeste Moore was sitting at her kitchen table in a tiny off-campus apartment. LSAT prep books stacked in front of her. A half-empty mug of coffee going cold. A highlighter tucked behind her ear. She was 22, pre-law, and the kind of student who color-coded her notes 3 different ways before an exam. Her phone buzzed. A text from her dad. It was a corny good morning meme, a cartoon son wearing sunglasses with the caption, "Rise and grind, baby girl." Underneath it, a second message. "Check your tire pressure this week. Love you." She rolled her eyes, smiled, texted back a single red heart. That was Derek Moore, the kind of father who still sent memes like it was 2014. The kind of man who spent 28 years climbing through the ranks of law enforcement and still reminded his grown daughter to check her tires every Saturday. 3 months ago, Derek Moore was appointed state police superintendent, the highest-ranking badge in the entire state. First black man to ever hold that position. It made headlines in the capital. Major outlets covered it. National press picked it up for a cycle. But in this small college town, barely a ripple. People here knew their local cops. They knew whose kid got out of a speeding ticket. They didn't track state-level appointments. That gap between who Derek Moore was and who this town thought he was, that gap is where this whole story lives. Celeste never mentioned her father's title. Not to classmates, not to professors, not to anyone. She drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic. She wore thrift store jackets. She split rent with a roommate. Nothing about her screamed power. And that was the point. She picked up her best friend Dana Watkins around 9. Dana climbed into the passenger seat with 2 breakfast burritos wrapped in foil and a playlist already queued on her phone. "You ready for Porter's study group?" Dana asked. "Ready to survive it," Celeste said. They laughed. Pulled out of the apartment complex, windows cracked, music low. A normal Saturday. Easy. Celeste drove the way she always drove. Both hands on the wheel, signal at every turn. 2 miles under the speed limit. The narrator wants you to sit with that for a second. She drove carefully. Not because she didn't know how to drive, but because she knew what could happen if she gave anyone a reason to look twice. Every black driver in America knows that math. You learn it before you learn parallel parking. Now let's talk about Brett Anderson. Brett woke up at 11 in his father's 4-bedroom suburban house. Empty beer cans on the nightstand. Sheets tangled on the floor. A framed photo on the hallway wall. His dad in full uniform, arm around Brett at a police charity golf tournament. Both grinning. Both untouchable. He grabbed the keys to his lifted black Dodge Ram. Graduation gift from Daddy. Custom wheels, tinted windows. The kind of truck that takes up 2 parking spaces and doesn't apologize for it. He pulled out of the driveway too fast, nearly clipped the neighbor's mailbox. No seatbelt, phone in one hand, energy drink in the other. This wasn't new. Brett had a history. A fender bender in a Walmart parking lot. Gone. A road rage complaint from a minivan driver. Vanished. A noise violation at a house party. Erased. Every single time, Sergeant Todd Anderson made a call, filed a favor, pulled a string. And every single time, Brett walked away like nothing happened. 3 incidents buried in 2 years. That's not a mistake. That's a system. Todd Anderson had been a patrol sergeant for 19 years. Well liked at the precinct. Decent poker player. The kind of guy who brought donuts on Mondays and knew everyone's wife's name. But he never made lieutenant. Never would. So he compensated the only way he knew how, by making sure his son never faced a single consequence for anything. And Brett? Brett learned the lesson perfectly. The badge wasn't about service. It was a shield. His shield. That Saturday morning, Brett was driving 15 over the limit through a residential zone. One hand on the wheel, eyes on his phone, headed to meet friends. He was 6 minutes away from the worst decision of his life. The intersection of Maple and 4th. A 4-way with a traffic light, a Shell gas station on one corner, and a laundromat on the other. Nothing special, the kind of intersection you pass through 1,000 times and never think about. Celeste had the green. She was mid-sentence, telling Dana about a professor who kept mispronouncing her name on purpose. Dana was laughing, unwrapping the second burrito. Then the world cracked open. The Dodge Ram came from the left. Fast. Way too fast. It blew through the red like the light didn't exist and slammed into the rear passenger side of the Civic with a sound that Celeste would hear in her sleep for months. Metal screaming against metal. The side mirror exploding into pieces. Glass spraying across Dana's lap like sharp little diamonds. The car spinning. Not a little, not a gentle slide. A full 90-degree spin that threw both of them against their seatbelts so hard the straps burned through their clothes and bit into their skin. Then silence. Just for a second. That awful, ringing silence after a crash where your brain hasn't caught up yet. Celeste's hands were locked on the steering wheel. White knuckles. Her ears were humming. The airbag dust floated through the car like fog. She could smell burnt rubber and something chemical. The airbag powder, sharp and bitter in her throat. Her neck throbbed. A warm trickle ran down her forearm, a small cut from the glass she hadn't felt yet. "Dana," her voice came out hoarse. "Dana, are you okay?" Dana was holding her shoulder, wincing. The seatbelt had dug in hard. A red welt was already forming across her collarbone. Yeah, I think so. What the hell just happened?" Celeste looked through the cracked driver's window. The lifted black Dodge Ram sat 15 feet away, barely a scratch on it. Its chrome grille gleamed like a grin. The size difference was almost cruel, like a pit bull that had just swatted a kitten. The driver's door opened. Brett Anderson stepped out. He didn't rush over, didn't jog, didn't call out, "Are you okay?" He walked to the front of his truck first, ran his hand along the bumper, checked his headlight, crouched down and inspected his fender like a man checking on his firstborn child. Then he stood up, dusted off his jeans, and looked at the Civic. He looked at the car, looked at the damage, looked at Celeste stepping out, a young black woman in a thrift store jacket, glass dust in her hair, blood on her arm, hands trembling, and his whole face changed. Not concern, not guilt, something else. Something cold and practiced, like a mask clicking into place. He'd done this before. He knew the playbook. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he said. Not yelling yet, just loud enough to establish territory. "You ran that light." "I had the green," Celeste said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "You came through the red." "No, I didn't. You pulled out in front of me." He pointed at her car like it was evidence against her. "Look at this. Look what you did to my truck." "Your truck is fine. My car is—" "Your car was trash before I touched it." He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the energy drink on his breath. "What are you even doing on this side of town?" Celeste didn't answer that. She knew what the question meant. She'd heard it before, in grocery stores, in coffee shops, at her own campus library. "What are you doing here?" The quiet translation was always the same. "You don't belong." Dana opened the passenger door. She was holding her shoulder, still in pain, but she heard that. She looked at Celeste. Celeste gave a tiny shake of her head. "Not now. Let's just exchange insurance information," Celeste said. Calm, professional, like she was reading from a manual. "I have my documents right here." Brett laughed. Not a real laugh. The kind of laugh that's designed to make you feel small. The kind of laugh that fills up a room and pushes everyone else into a corner. "Insurance? You? Don't make me laugh." He looked her up and down, slowly, deliberately, like he was examining something stuck to the bottom of his shoe. "You probably don't even have insurance. Girls like you cause an accident and then try to get a payday. I've seen it 100 times. "I didn't cause anything. You ran the red light." "Who's gonna believe that? You?" He gestured at her, then at himself. "Or me?" The way he said it, the absolute certainty in his voice, like the answer was already decided before the question was asked. Like the world had always worked in his favor, and there was no reason today would be any different. "My dashcam recorded everything," Celeste said. That landed. His eyes flicked to the Civic's windshield, just for a half second. A tiny crack in the confidence. His jaw tightened. But he covered it fast, faster than you'd expect from someone who just heard the word dashcam after lying to someone's face. "I don't care about your little camera." He waved his hand like he was swatting a mosquito. "It doesn't matter what your camera says. It recorded the whole thing, the light, the impact, everything. And? You think anyone's gonna care?" He leaned in, his voice dropped, not quieter, meaner. "Let me tell you how this works. My dad's a sergeant. He's got friends in every precinct in this county. Your little dash cam? That footage will disappear before you get home." He let that land, watched her face for a reaction. She gave him nothing. So he pulled out his phone, not to call the police, not to call insurance. He called his father, and he did it right there, in front of her, loud, performative. He wanted her to hear every word. "Dad, some girl just hit my truck at Maple and 4th. A pause. "Yeah, she ran the light. Black girl, early 20s, driving some beat-up Honda." Another pause. He looked at Celeste while he spoke, eyes locked on hers, smiling. That lazy, entitled smile that said, "I own this situation, and you can't do a thing about it." "Can you send someone?" Yeah, the usual." The usual. Let that phrase sit for a second. The usual. Like burying his messes was a standing order. Like his father had a script. Like they'd rehearsed this so many times it didn't even require a full sentence anymore. He hung up, slid the phone into his back pocket, crossed his arms, leaned against his truck like he was posing for a photograph. "My dad's a cop." He said it slowly, savoring each word like candy on his tongue. "A sergeant. He's been on the force almost 20 years. So whatever you think happened here, that's not what the report's gonna say." He tilted his head, smiled again. "Sweetheart." Celeste felt it. The heat behind her eyes, the tightness in her chest, the pulse in her jaw from clenching it too hard. She knew this feeling, had known it her whole life. The feeling of being talked to like you're less than nothing by someone who's never had to earn a single thing he has. But she didn't break. She didn't yell. She didn't give him what he wanted. "I'll call dispatch myself," she said. Brett shrugged, palms up, big theatrical gesture. "Go ahead. Call whoever you want. Call the governor for all I care." He grinned. "Who do you think they all work for?" At the gas station, a small crowd had formed. A man in a work truck filling up his tank, pretending not to watch, but watching. A woman with 2 young kids walking out of the convenience store, pulling them closer. A couple of teenagers leaning against a parked car, phones already up, recording from a distance. Nobody said a word. Nobody stepped in. They just watched. Brett didn't care. He liked the audience. He'd always liked the audience. Being loud, being big, being in control. That was the only version of himself he knew. Dana, still in the passenger seat, quietly angled her phone through the cracked window. She hit record. The little red dot blinked on the screen. She said nothing. She didn't need to. The camera was doing the talking. Celeste stood next to her wrecked car. Glass in her hair, blood drying on her arm, neck starting to stiffen. The October breeze carried the smell of gasoline and burnt rubber across the lot. She didn't move, didn't plead, didn't look away. She was waiting, but not for help. She was waiting for him to finish digging. Sergeant Todd Anderson arrived before dispatch even picked up Celeste's call. A white patrol car rolled into the gas station lot. No lights, no siren. The engine idled for a moment, low and heavy. Then the door opened, and out stepped a broad-shouldered man in jeans and a polo shirt. Off-duty, civilian clothes. But his badge was clipped to his belt, catching the October sun like a warning sign. He didn't approach Celeste. He walked straight to Brett, checked the truck, ran his hand along the bumper, put his arm around the kid's shoulder, squeezed. The gesture said everything. "I'm here. You're fine. This is handled." They exchanged a few words, low, private. Brett nodded toward Celeste. Todd glanced over his shoulder at her. His expression didn't change. It didn't need to. The decision was already made before he turned around. Then he walked toward her. The second his eyes landed on Celeste, something shifted. His posture changed. His jaw set. His walk slowed to that deliberate, heavy stride that men use when they want you to feel them coming before they arrive. Each boot step on the asphalt sounded like a slow, confident knock on a door he already planned to break down. "License and registration," he said. No greeting, no, "Are you okay?" No introduction, just a command. "Sir, your son ran a red light and hit my car," Celeste said. "I'm the victim here. I already called dispatch." "I didn't ask what happened. I asked for your license and registration." She handed them over. She knew the game. She knew that refusing would give him something to use against her. So she played it clean, played it by the book, the way her father taught her. He held her ID up close, studied it, turned it over, looked at the address, looked at her face, looked at the car, looked back at her face again, slowly, like he was comparing a mugshot to a suspect. "Where are you coming from this morning?" "Excuse me?" "I said, where are you coming from? It's a simple question." "My apartment. I was going to a study group." Study group. He repeated it like it was a lie. Like those 2 words were the most suspicious thing he'd heard all week. "What school?" "The university. I'm a senior." He didn't acknowledge that, didn't write it down, just kept staring at her ID like he was waiting for it to confess something. Is this vehicle yours? Yes. You sure about that? Because the registration says, it says Celeste Moore. That's my name. That's my car. He looked at her for a long, suffocating moment. Then at the Civic. Then at Dana, still sitting in the passenger seat holding her shoulder. Who's she? My friend. She got ID? She's a passenger. She doesn't need to show you anything. Todd's eyes narrowed, just barely. Just enough to let her know she'd made a note in his head, and not a good one. Is there anything in this vehicle you want to tell me about? He said. Slowly. The kind of slow that sounds like a trap being set. One syllable at a time. There's nothing to tell. You sure? Because I'm going to ask you one more time. And I'd think carefully before you answer. Celeste felt the weight of it. The quiet machinery of intimidation cranking into gear. Every question designed not to find truth, but to build pressure. The same machine that had protected Brett his entire life was now pointed directly at her. A second patrol car pulled into the lot. This one had lights on the roof and a number on the side. Officer Nolan Price stepped out. 24 years old, first year on the job. Clean uniform, nervous eyes, a pen already in his hand like a student arriving late to an exam. He saw Sergeant Anderson and stopped mid-stride. His back straightened, his shoulders pulled in. The body language of a man who just realized his boss was already at the scene. Todd walked over, pulled Nolan aside, spoke low, too low for Celeste to hear, but loud enough for Nolan to understand exactly what was expected. Nolan nodded. Once, twice, 3 times. He didn't ask questions. He didn't push back. He just nodded like a man being given an order he couldn't refuse. When Nolan approached Celeste, he already had the accident report form on his clipboard, but the way he started filling it out told the whole story. He noted the damage to Brett's truck first. He described Brett's vehicle as struck by oncoming traffic. He described Celeste's vehicle as failed to yield. I didn't fail to yield, Celeste said. I had the green light. I have dashcam footage. Nolan paused. His pen hovered over the paper. He glanced back at Todd, who was leaning against his patrol car with his arms crossed, watching like a foreman supervising a construction site. We probably don't need to pull any footage for something this straightforward,
Todd said from behind them. Casual, like dashcam evidence was a minor inconvenience he could wave away with 5 words. Nolan went back to writing. Celeste watched the pen move, watched the lies take shape on paper in real time. Each stroke of ink was another brick in a wall being built around her. I want it noted in the report that I have dashcam footage, she said.
Nolan hesitated, looked at Todd again. Todd said nothing, just shook his head, a tiny motion, barely more than a twitch. But Celeste saw it, and Dana's camera saw it too. Nolan didn't write it down. Then Todd pushed off his patrol car and walked towards Celeste's Civic. He circled it slowly, bent down, looked through the windows, cupped his hands against the glass. Then he tried the rear door handle. I'm going to need you to step away from the vehicle so I can take a look inside, he said. Standard procedure after an accident. That's not standard procedure, Celeste said. And I don't consent to a search. I'm not searching. I'm inspecting for safety. You're off duty, sir, in civilian clothes. You have no authority to inspect my vehicle without my consent or a warrant. His face went tight. A muscle jumped in his jaw. I smell something coming from this car, he said. No, you don't. Are you telling me what I smell? I'm telling you there's nothing in my car. I do not consent to this search. There is no probable cause. He reached for the rear door handle again. Celeste stepped in front of it. Not aggressive, not confrontational, just present. She placed her body between his hand and her car, like a period at the end of a sentence. Dana adjusted her phone. The lens pointed directly at Todd's face. The red recording dot blinked steady. "Put that phone away," Todd said. His voice dropped low and hard. "Now." "She has every right to record," Celeste said. "I said put it away, for officer safety." "You're off duty." That one hit different. Todd's nostrils flared. His hand dropped from the handle, but his eyes stayed locked on Celeste. Cold, steady, memorizing her like a man writing a name on a list. He stepped back, pulled out his radio, called for a second unit. "We might need additional support at Maple and 4th, he said into the receiver. Calm, professional, practiced. Uncooperative individual at the scene of a traffic collision. Uncooperative. That word. Celeste knew exactly what it meant in a police report. She knew how fast it could transform a victim into a threat. One word, 6 syllables, and suddenly you're not the person who got hit. You're the problem. Todd clipped the radio back. "You can either cooperate, or we can do this a different way. Your choice." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Brett was leaning against his truck the whole time, arms crossed, ankles crossed, smiling like he was watching his favorite show on a Sunday afternoon. He'd seen this play out before. His dad stepping in, flipping the script, making the other person the problem. It always worked. Every single time. The teenagers at the gas station were still recording. The woman with 2 kids had pulled them into her car and locked the doors. The man in the work truck had driven away without looking back. An older woman near the laundromat shook her head slowly, lips pressed tight. But she said nothing. Nobody said a word. That's the thing about moments like this. Everyone sees it. Everyone feels it. But the silence is always louder than the injustice. Celeste stood alone next to her crumpled car. Glass in her hair, blood dried brown on her arm, neck stiffening with every minute. An off-duty sergeant with no warrant and no cause standing over her. His son laughing behind him. A young officer too scared to write the truth. A second unit coming, not because she'd done anything wrong, but because she'd refused to be silent. Celeste's hands were trembling. Her breath was short, but her voice was steel. She reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone, and made one quiet phone call. Celeste stepped a few feet away from the car. She held the phone to her ear. Her voice was low, steady, almost flat. The voice of someone who had already decided what needed to happen. "Dad, I was in an accident. I'm okay. Dana's okay." A pause. "The other driver ran a red light and hit me. His father is a sergeant, Todd Anderson. He showed up off duty, tried to search my car without cause, and pressured the responding officer to falsify the report." Another pause. "Yes, sir. Maple and 4th, the Shell station." She hung up, slid the phone back in her pocket, walked back to her car, and stood next to Dana. Brett had watched the whole call. He nudged his father. "Who's she calling? Her mom?" He grinned. "What's Mommy gonna do? Come yell at us?" Todd didn't laugh. Something about the way Celeste had spoken on that phone, the calm, the precision, the words, "falsify the report," pricked something in the back of his mind. But he shook it off. He'd been doing this for 19 years. No one had ever made him answer for anything. "Don't worry about it," Todd told his son. "We're fine." 8 minutes. That's all it took. The first thing Celeste heard was the engines. Low, heavy, the kind of sound that vibrates in your chest before your ears register it. Two black SUVs turned onto Maple Street. No sirens, no flashing lights, just dark-tinted glass and Virginia State police plates. They pulled into the gas station lot and stopped side by side, perfectly aligned, like they'd done this 1,000 times. The doors of the first vehicle opened. Two plainclothes officers stepped out, tall, stone-faced, hands at their sides. They didn't speak. They just scanned the scene, the crumpled Civic, the Dodge Ram, the patrol cars, the crowd, and positioned themselves on either side of the second SUV. Then the rear door of the second SUV opened. Superintendent Derek Moore stepped out. He wasn't in uniform, weekend jacket, dark slacks. But the badge on his belt caught the light the same way Todd's did, except this one was different. This one had a star. This one had rank insignia that only one person in the entire state carried. State Police Superintendent. The top badge. The final word. Officer Nolan Price saw it first. His clipboard nearly slipped out of his hands. His face went white. He straightened up so fast his spine cracked. Todd Anderson saw it second. The smirk he'd been wearing all morning didn't just fade. It collapsed. It fell off his face like something that was never bolted on properly. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Brett saw it last. He didn't recognize the badge. He didn't understand the rank. But he understood the SUVs. He understood the plainclothes detail. And he understood, for the first time in his 23 years of living, that his father's face looked like fear. Derek didn't look at Brett, didn't glance at Todd. He walked straight to Celeste, put both hands on her shoulders, looked at her neck, checked her eyes, tilted her chin gently to look at the cut on her arm. "You okay?" "I'm okay, Dad." He looked into the car. "Dana?" "I'm fine, Mr. Moore. Just my shoulder." He nodded, squeezed Celeste's arm once. Then he turned around. When Derek Moore turned to face Todd Anderson, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The gas station went so quiet you could hear the breeze pushing an empty coffee cup across the asphalt. "Sergeant Anderson." Each word landed like a gavel. "You are off duty, in civilian clothes. You responded to a collision involving your own son, not as a witness, but as an authority. You conducted questioning of the victim without cause. You attempted an unauthorized search of her vehicle without consent, without probable cause, and without a warrant. You pressured a responding officer to suppress dashcam evidence and falsify an accident report. You called for additional units to intimidate a cooperating citizen." He paused. Let the silence do its work. "Is there anything I've missed?" Todd's mouth moved. His lips formed the beginning of something. An excuse, an explanation, a 19-year habit of talking his way out. "Sir, I was just... It's my son, and I thought..." "You were just what, Sergeant? Doing your job? You're off duty. This was never your job. What you did here today has a name. It's called obstruction." Brett took a step backward. Unconscious, instinctive, like the ground under him had shifted and he was trying to find something solid to stand on. He looked at his father for reassurance. Todd had nothing to give. Derek turned to Officer Price. His voice didn't soften, but it steadied. "Officer, I want a corrected accident report based on the dashcam footage from my daughter's vehicle and all available bystander recordings. The original report is flagged for review." Nolan's voice cracked. "Yes, sir. Immediately, sir." Derek turned to his detail officers. One nod. That was all it took. "Sergeant Anderson is relieved of duty effective immediately. pending a full internal affairs investigation. Please escort him from the scene. His son remains. He is the at-fault driver and will be cited accordingly. Todd opened his mouth one more time. Nothing came out. He looked at his badge, still clipped to his belt, like he was seeing it for the first time. One of the plainclothes officers extended a hand, palm up. Todd unclipped the badge, placed it in the officer's hand. And just like that, 19 years disappeared into someone else's palm. Todd Anderson didn't go quietly. He stood next to the state SUV, hands at his sides, and tried to negotiate. The way he'd negotiated his whole career. Quiet words, reasonable tone. The voice of a man who'd spent 19 years learning how to make problems disappear. Superintendent, please, let's talk about this. I've been on the force 19 years. 19 years without a formal complaint. This is a misunderstanding. I was just trying to help my son. Derek Moore looked at him the way a surgeon looks at an X-ray. Clinical, precise, completely unmoved. 19 years, Derek repeated. 19 years on the force, and you don't know what probable cause means. 19 years, and you pressure a first-year officer to write a false report. 19 years, and you try to suppress evidence at a scene your own son caused. He let each sentence land on its own. 19 years, Sergeant. And this is what you built with them. Todd's jaw trembled, not from anger, from something worse. The slow, nauseating realization that the playbook he'd run his entire career, the favors, the phone calls, the quiet arrangements, had just been read out loud in front of a gas station full of people with cameras. Sir, if we could just... somewhere private. No. Derek didn't blink. You didn't give my daughter privacy when you interrogated her in front of a crowd. You don't get it now. Todd was escorted to the state vehicle, one officer on each side. Not rough, not dramatic, just final. His service weapon was collected. His radio was collected. He sat in the back seat of the SUV and stared at the floor. The same floor he'd put hundreds of other people above, looking down. The bystanders watched. Every phone was up now. The teenagers, the older woman by the laundromat, a man who'd pulled his car over just to see what the SUVs were about. They all watched a sergeant get walked off his own crime scene. Brett stood alone by his truck. For the first time in his life, there was no arm around his shoulder. No one walking over to say, "I'll handle it." No phone call being made on his behalf. Just him and the October wind and the sound of Officer Price's pen, finally writing the truth. Nolan Price cited Brett Anderson for running a red light, reckless driving, operating a vehicle while using a handheld device, and failure to render aid to the occupants of the vehicle he struck. 4 citations. Each one a door closing. Brett's license was suspended pending review. His truck was impounded as evidence. Celeste's dashcam had captured the moment of impact from every angle that mattered. The footage was time-stamped. The light was red. There was nothing to argue. Brett tried one last time. Muscle memory, the only reflex he knew. "This is insane! Do you even know who my—" He stopped, mid-sentence. He looked at the state SUVs, looked at the plainclothes officers, looked at the back of his father's head through the tinted window. He closed his mouth. He pulled out his phone, called someone, a friend maybe, and walked to the curb. He sat down on the concrete, elbows on his knees, staring at the ground. For the first time in 23 years, the name Anderson didn't open a single door. EMS arrived a few minutes later. Celeste was checked first. Mild whiplash. The cut on her arm was superficial, but needed cleaning. Dana's shoulder was bruised from the seatbelt. Nothing broken, but she'd feel it for weeks. Both were cleared at the scene, but told to follow up with their doctors. Derek stood with Celeste while the paramedics worked. He didn't make a speech, didn't give a lecture. He just stood next to her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "I'm proud of how you handled that," he said. Quiet, just for her. She nodded. Her eyes were wet, but she didn't cry. Not here. Not in front of the cameras. Dana sent the recording to Celeste's phone. Celeste saved it to cloud storage before the paramedic finished cleaning her arm. Some instincts you don't learn in a textbook. Some instincts come from growing up black in a country that doesn't always believe you. Derek asked if she wanted a ride home. She shook her head. "Dana can take me. Go handle what you need to handle." He nodded, hugged her once, brief, tight, the kind of hug that says more than a paragraph ever could. Then he climbed into the SUV and was gone. The internal affairs investigation started Monday morning. Deputy Superintendent Gloria Tate led it personally. Gloria Tate was the kind of woman who made nervous people more nervous. 51 years old, 26 years in law enforcement. She wore reading glasses on a chain around her neck and had a habit of letting silence do her questioning for her. When she sat across from you in an interview room, she didn't rush. She didn't raise her voice. She just waited. And people talked. They always talked. She pulled Todd Anderson's service record first. On paper, it was clean. 19 years, no formal complaints, no disciplinary hearings, no flags. But Gloria Tate didn't trust paper. She trusted patterns. She dug deeper, and the deeper she went, the uglier it got. 6 incidents involving Brett Anderson over the past 3 years. 6. A fender bender in a Walmart parking lot. The other driver filed a complaint that was marked resolved with no follow-up. A road rage incident on Route 15. The complainant, a black man in his 40s, was told there was insufficient evidence, despite 2 witnesses. A noise complaint from a neighbor, withdrawn after Todd paid the neighbor a personal visit in uniform. 3 more buried under layers of favors and misplaced paperwork. Every single time, the same fingerprints. Todd making a call. Todd filing a request. Todd showing up where he shouldn't have been, saying words that weren't quite threats, but weren't quite not. Gloria interviewed Officer Nolan Price on Tuesday. Nolan sat across from her with his hands flat on the table, knuckles white. He didn't try to cover for himself. He didn't minimize what happened. He told her everything. "Sergeant Anderson pulled me aside and told me how to write the report," Nolan said. "He told me the girl ran the light. He told me not to note the dash cam. I knew it was wrong. I knew it while I was doing it. And I did it anyway because he outranked me and I was scared." Gloria wrote it down, word for word. Nolan was placed on administrative leave, pending review. He wasn't disciplined. His full cooperation and honesty were noted in the file. But he'd carry that Tuesday morning interview with him for the rest of his career. Some lessons cost more than others. The dashcam footage from Celeste's car was entered into evidence. Clean, time-stamped, high resolution. It showed the light. It showed the ram. It showed the impact. There was nothing to interpret, nothing to spin. The light was green for Celeste and red for Brett. End of discussion. Then the video went public. Dana posted her recording on Wednesday, with Celeste's permission. 4 minutes and 31 seconds of footage. Todd Anderson, badge on his belt, reaching for the car door. His hand on the handle. Celeste's voice, calm and clear. "I do not consent to this search." Brett in the background, leaning on his truck, arms crossed, smiling. It hit 100,000 views by Thursday morning. By Friday, it was everywhere. Local news ran it first, then the state outlets, then national. The headline wrote itself. It was practically the title of this story. Cop's son hits black girl's car, screams, "My dad's a cop," unaware her dad runs the whole force. Every network had a version. Every anchor had an opinion. Every comment section became a confessional. People shared their own stories. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Stories about being pulled over for nothing. About being searched without cause. About watching someone's kid walk free because of a badge. The video wasn't just a video anymore. It was a mirror. Superintendent Derek Moore held a press conference on Friday afternoon. He stood behind a lectern with the state seal on the front and the flag behind him. He didn't read from notes. He didn't use a teleprompter. He spoke the way he always spoke. Direct, measured, heavy with meaning. No officer, regardless of rank, tenure, or personal connection, is above the law they swore to uphold. What happened at that intersection was not an isolated incident. It was the result of a culture that allowed one man's authority to override accountability for years. A reporter in the second row raised her hand. "Superintendent, can you confirm that the victim in this case is your daughter?" "She is." He didn't hesitate. "And I want to be very clear about something. My daughter received the same protection any citizen of this state should receive. The failure here is that without her knowledge of the law and her composure under pressure, this situation could have ended very differently. That's not a success story. That's a systemic problem. And that's what I intend to fix." The trial came 6 weeks later. Regional DA Elliot Shaw filed the charges personally. Todd Anderson was charged with obstruction of justice, abuse of authority, evidence tampering for attempting to suppress the dashcam footage, and witness intimidation. He sat at the defense table in a gray suit. No badge, no radio, no authority. Just a man in a chair, waiting to hear what 19 years of shortcuts had finally cost him. The verdict: guilty on all counts. Sentenced to 18 months in a state correctional facility. 3 years probation upon release. Immediate termination from the force. Full forfeiture of pension. 19 years. Gone in one morning. Brett Anderson was charged separately. Reckless driving. Filing a false statement. He had told Officer Price that Celeste ran the light and the dashcam proved otherwise. His license was suspended for 2 years. 200 hours of community service. Mandatory traffic safety education. Full financial restitution for Celeste's vehicle, medical expenses, and Dana's treatment. He sat next to his father in that courtroom. Neither of them looked up when the verdicts were read. But the case didn't end with the Andersons. Todd's buried incidents were reopened. 2 additional victims came forward. Both people of color, both with complaints that had been quietly erased from the system. A formal civil rights review of the local precinct was launched by the State Attorney General's office. Superintendent Moore used the case to push statewide reform. Mandatory dashcam and body cam review for every accident report. A whistleblower protection program for junior officers who report misconduct. An independent civilian oversight board for complaints involving officers or their family members. Officer Nolan Price was reinstated after completing an ethics training program. 3 months later, he gave an interview to the state press about the pressure young officers face to go along. That interview was turned into a training module. It's now shown at every police academy in the state. The culture of cover-ups didn't vanish overnight. Cultures never do. But the first crack had been made. And cracks, given enough time, bring down walls. 6 months later. Celeste Moore was sitting at the same kitchen table in her off-campus apartment. Same stack of books, Same second-hand chair. But the mug was different now. This one said, "Future Civil Rights Attorney." Dana had given it to her as a birthday gift. It was ugly. She loved it. She'd aced her LSAT. Not just passed, crushed it. Top 2%. 3 law schools sent acceptance letters. She chose the one with the strongest civil rights program. Full scholarship. She started in the fall. She still drove carefully. Both hands on the wheel. Signal at every turn. New car now. Insurance payout covered most of it. Same brand of dash cam mounted on the windshield. Some habits aren't habits. They're armor. Dana was still her best friend. They didn't talk about that Saturday often, but when they did, Dana always said the same thing. "You didn't flinch. Not once." Celeste would shrug, change the subject. But she remembered every second. The glass in her hair, the spit on her windshield, the sound of Todd Anderson's boots on the asphalt, the way Brett smiled like the world was his and always would be. She remembered standing there, shaking hands, steady voice, and choosing not to break. That choice lived inside her now, quiet, permanent, like a bone that healed back stronger. Her relationship with her dad didn't change. That was the part people on the internet couldn't understand. They expected some dramatic shift, press conferences together, matching interviews, a father-daughter brand. But Derek Moore still texted her corny memes every morning. She still texted back a heart. Some things don't need to become a story. Some things are just love. Todd Anderson served his 18 months. When he got out, he took a civilian security job at a warehouse distribution center on the edge of town. Night shifts. No badge, no radio. No authority over anything except a parking gate and a clipboard. His name showed up in law enforcement training materials across the state. Not as a villain, not as a monster. As a case study. A detailed, clinical example of how unchecked authority corrodes from the inside out. How small favors become big crimes. How silence becomes complicity. Brett Anderson completed his 200 hours of community service at a community center in a predominantly black neighborhood. He swept floors. He set up chairs for after-school programs. He served meals on Thursdays. Did it change him? The narrator doesn't know, and neither do you. Accountability doesn't always produce transformation. Sometimes it just produces consequences. And sometimes, consequences are enough. So here's what I want you to take from this. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a 22-year-old woman standing next to her wrecked car with glass in her hair, saying 5 words, "I do not consent to this search." Sometimes it's a father who spent 28 years building a career on the belief that a badge means service, not power. Sometimes it's a first-year officer sitting in an interview room, telling the truth even though it might cost him everything. And sometimes, it's the rest of us. The bystanders, the viewers, the people reading the comments at 2 in the morning, deciding that silence isn't neutral. Deciding that watching isn't enough. The system doesn't fix itself. It never has. People fix it. People who know their rights. People who press record. People who refuse to look away. So let me ask you something. If you were standing at that gas station, watching Todd Anderson reach for that door handle, watching Brett lean against his truck with that smile, would you have said something? Would you have recorded? Or would you have walked away? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to hear it. I genuinely want to know. And if this story hit you somewhere in the chest, if it made you angry, or made you think, or reminded you of something you've seen with your own eyes, smash that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe, because we've got more stories coming. And trust me, the next one is even wilder. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.